Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've just come back from seeing the high frame rate version in 3D Plus they're calling it, of Gemini Man.
Yes.
There are actually two high frame rate versions of this. There's 60 frames per second, which is what we saw, which is up from your traditional film frame rate of 24 frames per second. And there's also 120 frames per second, which is 5 times normal film.
Right.
But there seems to be very few places showing that. So we've seen 60 frames per second.
Okay. And the version of The Hobbit...
The Hobbit that came out a few years ago was, I think, 48. So double normal film.
Okay. So this is even a higher frame rate than The Hobbit.
Correct. I believe so,
Okay.
yes.
Because I thought that looked awful. So, and this looks much better, actually.
I think this makes a much better case
Yeah.
for high frame rate. So at the start, I mean, neither of us went into this film with high expectations.
No.
At all.
But also, I had no knowledge of it at all. So, neither high nor low particularly.
Well, you'd seen enough of the trailer to know it was Will Smith versus Will Smith.
I don't remember.
No?
No.
Every time the trailers come on in the past few weeks, I've gone, that looks cool. It's been my duty.
Right, okay. Well, I'm sorry, I haven't been paying attention to you.
Fair enough. The idea is old Will Smith, well, old, what he is now, 50-ish,
Yes.
versus young Will Smith, Fresh Prince era, has been brought back digitally. And crucially, this isn't, at least if Will Smith's appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert the other day is to be believed, this is not de-aging, as in the Marvel movies. I think Scorsese's new movie is doing de-aging, where you take a real performance and you de-age it in the computer. This is CGI character entirely from the ground up, so it is more akin to like an alien character or a robot or something.
Yes.
This is a human creation in CGI.
That's the younger version.
That's not the old one. The old one they filmed.
It's not
for
even
it.
an actor playing the body, or
I don't know for sure, but I would imagine this has not been completely invented, as in the facial performance is based on capture from Will Smith. I'm sure,
yes.
but it's not him having been filmed and then de-aged down. It is
whatever it was a mistake.
I thought it was great.
I hated it.
Go
on. Well, several things actually. I hated Will Smith as well, and I love him, but there was something odd about his face. Yeah, it's like his face was too plump, and also kind of vacant, and he's charmless. And actually, Will Smith charmless is dull Will Smith. There's nothing else going on, right? So and I don't know if it's the direction or the character. But, Will Smith is the most charming man alive, and he's not here, really. So I think there's a big blank in the middle of this film that comes from his performance.
Performance and a script that doesn't give him fun things to say.
I know, but the thing about stars like Will Smith is, they often exceed or make up for, poor scripts, because they have this charisma. And that's not evident in this film. I was paying attention because, I did notice it, and I asked that question. I mean, how come he's so charmless in this? And then you notice that actually without the charm, there's no depth, there's no layers, there's nothing in the performance. Like, he's a blank.
He's trying to hit. Well, he's trying to hit charming elements, like the relationship between him and Benedict Wong, him and Mary Elizabeth Winstead are trying to hit charming things, and they don't manage it.
No.
But he's also going for a dramatic relationship with his younger self, which works better, I think.
Well, I don't think it works at all. And I did think that his younger self, it looked like a guppy. It was obviously like, to me, it was completely expressionless. Or, the kind of by the numbers expressions, that you sometimes see in poor animated films, right? Where you could see the movement of the eyes kind of trying to create an emotion, but it's all one note. Again, there's nothing, no contradictions between one feeling and another, it was like, I thought it was like terrible.
I don't think that gives the CGI Will Smith enough credit. I think I found it really, really convincing. I mean, I thought especially in a high frame rate, I thought that would expose it even more as fake. I believed it. I thought it was well rendered, well lit. It fit into the scenes.
You know that Tim Burton film about the lady who painted those,
Big Eyes.
Big Eyes, yeah? Is that the name of the film?
I haven't seen it, but I think that's the one.
Okay. Well, CGI Will is like a big eye painting. Everything is like this mechanical, soulful moving of the eyes.
I disagree. I think the eyes is where
so stupid.
No, I disagree. I think the eyes are where the character is convincing, because that's what you're looking at, and I get what you mean. There are a couple of close-ups where it's like the character is foregrounded and in focus, and then you've got like old Will Smith or someone else, or the Clive Owen character will be in the background out of focus talking to him, and it's about young Will Smith responding and reacting, and they do a lot with eyes kind of moving left to right, him processing this information, whether that's animated or whether that's taken from Will Smith's real performance, being built upon, whether it's built upon a real performance by Will Smith, don't know, but I thought I could see a certain amount of kind of cogs turning in that. Like it is a slightly mechanical performance, but I don't think it's kind of mechanically put together, if that makes sense. It felt realistic and organic, and I believed its place in the scene and all that kind of thing.
Well, we have to disagree on that. I mean,
I think it's a really great creation. I was very skeptical of it because again, on the Late Show,
I really disagree with you, because the film is lifeless.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the rest of the film. The film is terrible.
And I think this is part of the problem with it.
No, I think this is one of the best things about it.
I mean, a major part of this film has to be about the relationship of the Will Smith characters to each other, right? And if the film feels dead, it's because they haven't succeeded in achieving that.
Well, obviously I liked it more than you, because I went in for their relationship. Here's the thing, right? At the start of the film, I was thinking, especially with the 60 frames per second look, I was thinking to myself, listen, I am not the kind of guy to decry technological gimmicks, even if they are gimmicks. So I defended 3D long after other people were going, no, this is just rubbish. And I did a dissertation on 3D because I liked it so much, and I thought it was good, and I thought it had artistic merit. And even with what's it called? Let's say even with 4DX, 4DX is an absolute gimmick.
Yes.
And you and I both agree on that. But I also make the argument that it will make a shit film kind of entertaining, which is not the same as saying it's a useful tool, but I still defend it to that extent, as a gimmick that I enjoy. In this, I started off thinking, okay, so there's 60 frames per second. I've seen it fail before in The Hobbit. I've seen the high frame rate fail before, and I haven't liked it. And people talk very much about it being soap opera-like. And at the start of this, it's worse than that, to be fair. At the start of this, it's more like a wedding video. These kind of handheld shots. I think the worst thing about high frame rate is it really accentuates imperfections in a handheld shot. You see more movement in the camera.
Yes.
And that makes things feel much more artificial. Whereas I think dollies, tripods, drone shots, that sort of thing, they can work very, very well, as this film shows. But the point is, at the start I was thinking, no, this is another failure, and this is the reason why this will never catch on. By the end, I thought, actually, there is aesthetic merit to this, and this can work.
I'm ambivalent about the look, right? Because, there were some things that you just think, this is what I hate most about digital, right? Because it was like too much clarity, too much clearness. Everything was like pin, sharp, and I didn't like that. On the other hand, I thought it was balanced by what I sometimes feel when looking at films in 3D, that you're giving up a lot to get the 3D. Yeah, because you put on the glasses and the luminosity of the image cuts down in at least half, right? So you're often seeing something like that's a bit gray or dark, or so I thought that the 3D worked, quite well with, this high frame rate. So I thought that was a plus. There were moments that I thought, who lit this? Or actually there was no lighting. And then, you would have like little set pieces like the one in the church in Hungary, that you think, okay, somebody's paying attention to the lighting and the look of it and so on. But actually, I very rarely think about these things. So, the fact that it occurred to me, like, who's lighting this? It doesn't seem to be, that was a problem as well.
I found early on a lot of the lighting, it seemed to be a lot of natural light, and they were shooting during the daytime, and I was thinking it didn't make sense with the story, because it would make sense for things to be happening later at night for some reason, and in combination with the very conspicuously shaky camera, or kind of moving camera, it did feel cheap. And I had the same kind of thought, and I thought it might be because they needed a huge amount of light to get the 3D and the frame rate to capture enough of the scene. But when the film did start to move into darker territory, when they went underground to the catacombs and that sort of thing, I thought it was a huge improvement, and the film started to look really good.
It was. I agree with you there. But my God,
there were shot selections early on that made me think this is someone who is scared of choosing a shot that will look bad, and they've ended up choosing bad looking shots. Like it seemed to me like the film was afraid of its own technology. Like if we try and film it like a regular film, it just won't look right, and so it ended up with these very badly composed wide. Thing is, the wide angle works with 3D because it really emphasizes depth, and it really helps things look solid. And the high frame rate accentuates that even further. And there are some shots of nature and kind of objects like the bonsai tree,
and actually
that look beautiful. But they also look like promo shots that you get in, like when you go into Curry's and you look at the HD TVs and they're showing you this is how cool it looks. They kind of look like that.
They do. But I think that the thing about the depth of field with the 3D, there were some shots that you think it's marvelous because you really got that, and they did look beautiful. But let's go back to the basics. I was like completely shocked at the end of the film when the credits came up and it said directed by Ang Lee. You think, my God, really? I mean, there's a kind of logic to it because, you could see how the Hulk and the Life of Pi and this film, have things in common. But, the film has no sense of humor. It has no sense of spacing. No sense of pacing at all. I thought all of the action sequences seemed to be edited too slow. They lacked snap. Right, and there was sometimes an effect that you could see was desired with it, and they just edited it 10 seconds too late or something, right? To me, none of it worked on that level.
I had problems with the editing in the action in some part because I think it was about shot selection more than timing. So when someone fires a gun and kills someone, or when something explodes, the shot that is cut to when that happens is very, very far away and wide angle, and you see the entire scene, and you don't get the feeling of intensity in the scene because of it. It was about shot selection for me. But I did like a lot of the way the action was put together, though. With the exception of that, I think it does have snap. It does have a certain degree of visual.
I thought it was terrible. I mean, I thought the sequence where the younger or the cloned Will and the old Will fight, and there's that one, and it's in Cartagena in Colombia. And there's the scene where they fight and he's on a motorbike and, the other Will's in the car and he's actually like doing almost like this jujitsu with the bike. I thought, my God, that's such a great idea. And nothing worked in that scene.
It wasn't good enough.
You could see how it could have been marvelous, but it wasn't. And you may be right, that might have something to do with shot selection, where the camera was. Because actually that might not even be shot selection. It might be a problem that he doesn't know where to put the camera for action. That he might not have had other choices. But it definitely also had to do with the editing. And actually sometimes you saw that the bike didn't get close to the character. So whereas if they would have cut it just like 5-10 seconds before where you saw the bike approaching, yes, then you could have had the result of that. Whereas actually here you saw a miss, right? Or a lack of contact. It was... Well,
the bike's not supposed to hit him. He's supposed to be diving out the way of it, to be fair.
No, but there was a couple of shots where it actually was meant to have hit him.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
When?
Yes.
The whole point is
the whole point is that it's almost like a jujitsu sequence. So, he's making him fall by hitting him with the bike. Yeah, he puts him down by hitting him with the bike. This is in front of the car.
Yeah, I know the scene you're talking about. Yeah. I think the whole point of that, he keeps dodging the bike. Because then they go on to talk about, he knew the moves I was going to make before I made them. It's like we're the same person, the young one says.
Well, I didn't read it that way. I read it as, he was kind of fighting. The clone was fighting with Will through the bike.
He was, but old Will kept evading it.
but not because there were moments where he hit him.
Well, there
were several moments where he hit him. And took him out on the leg, brought him to the floor, and so on.
Yeah, oh no, he swept him. He swept him and he dived over it. But he didn't, he didn't smash him. You know,
the whole point
he got him down. He kept having to dive out the way and evade it.
He made contact many times.
He just didn't.
Well, he did.
He didn't.
Well, that's ridiculous. We can look it up because Well,
we won't be able to look that up. No one will have written that down.
No, but we can compare it to the film. Once it's downloadable or available from somewhere, because he definitely makes contact, and it's very badly done. So
I just disagree with you on that. I think there are things about that fight scene that are badly done. That's the first one in the film, and that's when I think the film is still sort of getting into the swing of its aesthetic.
What do you mean that's the first one in the film?
I think that's the first fight scene. That's where young and old Will first encounter each other.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
But that's not the first fight scene, though.
What fight scene is there before that?
There's a whole bunch of fight scenes where they invade, that's the marina and blah blah blah.
Well, the bike chase develops from young Will kind of stalking old Will through that house, and then they get on the bikes and
chase. The first fight scene between old Will and young Will, but it's not the first fight scene in the film.
What other fight scene is there? I don't remember. Anyway, that's not the point. It's early on in the film, is what I mean. Okay, let's not get bogged down in first or not. It's early on in the film, and it's in that period of the film where I was saying.
By the point that they get to Cartagena, Will has shot a man on a train.
Yeah,
he's gone home. There's been people who's been set out to kill him.
Yes.
I
forgot that.
There's the whole fight. There's the whole scene in the marina itself where they have to kill everybody and escape on the boat. There's the scene with the girl and the guy in the office where she's trying to get the keys. There's quite a lot of fight scenes.
That's one big scene where they're escaping. But I take your point. I've forgotten that they had to escape to Cartagena first.
Thank you. Just like you've forgotten about the
No, that's not true. I swear to God it's not true, because it's not the point of that fight. Anyway, but the point that I'm getting to is that this is early on in the film, this bike fight. And this is where I think the film is still kind of... It's weird to think of the film developing its aesthetic as it goes on, because that's not how you make a film. You don't make a film from beginning to end. So you'd feel like it's weird to think of the film growing into its aesthetic, but it does seem to. It seems to get used to its aesthetic as it moves along. So you have this very brash lighting, these very wide shots, and not very good editing. I don't think for the same reason as you do, but I don't think that the editing is good. I agree with you on that. And it does feel very cheap at this point. I mean, to me, it reminded me of that Tom Cruise, Cameron Diaz film, Night and Day, which was just like it's like saying, can I have 2 hours of a fight movie, please?
You know what I was thinking? Because I love this type of film, right? So I love action films, even when they're not like fantastic, right? My view on it is how far wrong can you go, right? Because they've got a big budget, so the technical specs will be fantastic, and then they have gorgeous locations. In this case, Hungary and Bolivia and so on. Budapest looks beautiful, right? You have stars. And like kind of the action sequences are like, musical numbers in a musical, like, they're better and worse, but, it's very rare that they're awful, right? And actually this is a film where that kind of thinking didn't get me anywhere at all, because, it was awful.
All right. No, I mean, it's definitely not great. And even though there were things I liked about some of the action scenes, they don't stand up to anything else really. They don't, and I don't think Ang Lee is an action director at all.
No, he's not. I mean, this has been demonstrated. So, and this is part of the problem with the film, because he's not an action director, and he's not a comedy director. And actually, if you agree with that, then what the fuck is he providing Will Smith with?
Yeah, what's he doing a comedy action film for?
Well, and also particularly Will Smith, because what Will Smith is known for is comedy and action, right? That's the things he brings to a film with his charm. And this is like, completely leaden throughout.
And drama, triple threat. He tries to bring the drama too. He tries to bring his pursuit of happiness, cry face.
Ugh.
I think that is the most successful thing that the film does do.
Oh, what's that?
The drama aspect.
Ugh.
Well, I don't. Hey, look! You don't have to agree that it's good to agree that it's the best thing it does. You can think the whole thing is shit.
That's true. That's a perspective I might go for.
So after the film, I stayed in the cinema and wrote down a number of notes because I was thinking of, and we've talked about one of the things I wrote about already, the idea of, thinking at the start this is a gimmick, and then at the end thinking, no, I think there's more to this. I like some of the clarity. I like some of the like when they set the final attacker on fire in the sort of warehouse place they are, the shop or whatever, and then you see he kind of stands up, and it's like the T-1000 in Terminator 2 kind of walking out the flames or something. It's in slow motion and the flames are licking around him, and it looks beautiful.
My favorite sequence in the film was that one, and sorry, the one just before that, where he seems to fly onto the buildings.
Yeah, yes, right. There's like free running up the building.
Yeah, which is a little bit like
Bourne films.
Well, I was thinking more, what were the Chinese films?
Crash Like a Hidden Dragon.
Yes.
That was Ang Lee, wasn't it?
I think so.
We'll double check that, actually, because it's been a while. I think that was Ang Lee.
And those moments where, they begin to, like, not quite fly on the roofs, but almost, like, fly walk or whatever
they glide over them.
Yeah. I thought...
Yes, Ang Lee it was.
Yeah. So, you see, I thought that was wonderful.
Yes, I agree. And there is, and I think the film, the fluidity that the high frame rates adds is a real contributor to that. So the scene, although it's in slow motion, when he stands up and he's enshrouded in flame, engulfed in flame,
yes,
the smoothness of the flames licking around him would not be the same in regular 24 frames per second, and I don't think it would look as good. And here's the thing, right? I said before that people talk about the high frame rate being televisual because they're used to the high frame rate on TV and soap operas and things. And it does not look like a soap. It looks like a film, but not like a film that you sort of... it's kind of talking around it in a way, and I feel kind of periphrastic, but it doesn't look like a film you've seen before in some ways. And in some ways, it should try harder to. I think it would... If it adopted kind of more conventional, longer lensed shots for close-ups, I think it would look better at times. Although I do think that wide-angle look for other shots really works. But it's not. I mean, it's not TV, and I don't think you could compare it to a soap opera. I think you'd have to be uncharitable to do so to say it has that look.
But the look is weird, because I mean, there were moments that actually did remind me of TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that pinpoint clarity of some of the early sequences shot in daylight.
I agree, and it returns to that right at the very end when they all meet up on that campus, and it goes back to that wedding video look. I think that's rubbish.
Yeah, but I'd be happy to see this frame rate used again, particularly in conjunction with 3D. I think it works really well with 3D.
I agree.
But this is one of many elements that is meant to be a vehicle for this narrative.
Can I say one more thing about the high frame rates? One more thing that occurred to me, which I think it's an interesting little nuance, which is the film starts off with very little movement, although there's a train moving and you really notice it. The film starts off with this scene of people being still on a train. Will Smith is lying on his belly with a sniper rifle waiting for the train to come past so he can assassinate someone on it. And so the early action scene, or the early scene that starts you off, is composed of a lot of very still close-ups. And I think that works really well because it's a high frame rate and you notice it. It's not like you think it's not.
I thought the whole thing was dull.
Well, but I think it's a good way of adjusting to the way the film's going to look. And because there's one moment in it when Will Smith moves his head, and you really notice that because it's such a big movement and it happens so smoothly, it does look weird at that point. So I think there is a period of adjustment, and when things are still, they look good. And when things are moving a lot in the action scenes, I think you get used to them looking good. There's an in-between, though, that is shonky.
I just think you're focusing on the look, whereas if you compare, some of that scene, with, some of the scenes I'm kind of now getting the Bertmiantov, the Russian director.
Timur Bekmambetov, I forget his name.
Yeah, Bertmiantov,
the one you like.
That's right. Kind of those are like so thrilling, really. Or even in a kind of a cheaper action film like The Tourist, which also has a moving train and so on. I mean, it's all kind of much more exciting than what we see at the beginning of this film, really.
Well, yes, so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about how exciting it is.
I know you're not talking about that,
but I think
that in.
But it requires devotion, and I think I would love to see Timur Bekmambetov or whatever his name. I forget his surname. I'd love to see him, or just a real action director, given access to this technology, because I think it absolutely can benefit. I think this film, with its awful action direction, still demonstrates that this high frame rate technology can really add something to action.
Okay, we can agree on that.
So,
but kind of A, it's still problematic, and B, it doesn't. The high frame technology is only kind of it's to be honest, it's the reason why we went to see the film.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm glad we've talked about it as long as we have, but that still leaves this leaden kind of dead weight of a film.
It is. I think the worst thing about the film is its script. This is a film that has been in kind of development hell for 20 years.
Yes,
I think 1997. So and the reason it never got made until now was technological. People said the technology is not there to do this, and they were right. It never has been before. I do think it works here. That is to say, the CGI technology, not the high frame rate technology.
I don't agree with you.
I know you don't agree with me, but I think the young Will Smith in this looks really convincing.
Well, I think he looks kind of convincing, except he's dead. So the look is fine.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's not conveying any emotion. And actually, I don't think it's just because of the screenplay. I think there's something about the technology. You can't replace human actors with that kind of technology.
Did you like Benjamin Button? Did you think that was a convincing?
I must say I haven't seen Benjamin.
Oh, you never saw Benjamin Button? Oh, fair enough. Benjamin Button was 10 years ago, and that was a completely CGI head when he's a very old man. And it looked.
Were the eyes the actors, or
it was complete. They had. From what I understand, they had one guy whose entire job was to develop the eyes.
Okay.
Because the eyes are the window on the soul.
Well, I can't comment on that, but
sure.
My experience of this was that. Well, actually, to be honest, all three Wills were terrible, right? I mean, but in order of awfulness, there was the real Will Smith, the clone that you first see, and then the final clone that is brought in at the end, who did look like, Bambi, with those glossy eyes, it was, ugh. Anyway, and I hated this film. The homily at the end when they go to the university, and which seemed never ending, and you think, this is just like a Will Smith cheap understanding of life. It's all positivity, rosy, a few homilies, right? And like it never ends. And it's all about, it's so smug and superior and ugh.
Yeah. But one thing I will say for the film is that, because we were chatting a little bit through it, because this isn't a very good film, and we weren't distracting other people, I don't think, but we were quietly having a comment to each other about what was going on. And there's one point in the middle of the film where, having made young Will's acquaintance and kind of got him on side, and because he's only just found out he's a clone, he wants to learn about who old Will is and where he comes from, that sort of thing. And there's this thing about who old Will's mother was, and he talks.
She worked 2 jobs.
Yeah. So you went. So you went as you're wont to do, and you know what it made me think was, it made me think how wonderful that this film exists, because I think it's going to really foster a new era of openness between us in terms of the way we react to things, because it allowed us, I think, to talk about those really rubbish tropes. Because I leant over to you and said, I don't know why you come into these films expecting them not to do this.
Yes, it's true, because it was like one cliche after another, and I suppose I really hate them because I find them so ideological.
Okay.
Right? It's like, it's like when you have massively successful people like Will Smith, going on to Oprah and talking about how they overcame their problems, and and how therapy helped them find the real self. And really, they shouldn't have focused so much on their career, but instead of like home and marriage and children, which actually he practically literally says. Right?
Does he?
Yes, he does. He says that to his younger self.
Oh, I thought you meant like in some interview you've seen.
No, well, I have also seen interviews where Will Smith talks about the wonder of all of those things, but you literally get that here, and it does feel like a Will Smith homily, like a spoken to Oprah or something. It is just like an offensive view of of American culture and the place of people in it, and actually the very privileged place that they occupy within that. I just hated it.
Yeah, I mean, right at the end of this film, you have old Will having vaguely adopted young Will as a kind of surrogate son, and young Will has gone off to university, or is going off to university at the time, and so they meet up on campus. Mary Elizabeth Winstead's there as well, having got her doctorate, I think, in marine biology, or whatever it is. And so they become this little family at the end, and there is this play between young and old Will of a father-son thing that the film is very consciously doing, and the characters are doing it in a joking way as well. They're aware of it, but you are kind of going, like he's able to pay for college.
Yes.
Like young Will isn't having to work 2 jobs now.
Yes.
And work his way through life.
Ugh.
He can go to college. I don't know. There is an interesting thing I thought of. The film. The film asks or raises a metatextual question of image rights, I think. Because, so we've talked before a little bit about how in Rogue One, the Star Wars film, Peter Cushing's image was used, and it wasn't like in that Sky Captain World of Tomorrow where they used old footage of Laurence Olivier. They actually created a digital Peter Cushing after his death, and then had it played by an actor and given new lines and a part to play in the film. And there was, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, we've definitely talked about it at dinner once, and there was this whole issue around that of really who has the right to do that. I guess his estate has the right to his likeness.
Well, I should hope so.
And they've obviously agreed that this is okay, but the actor has not had a say in this. And in this, there's obviously this thing about creating this digital Will Smith of the Fresh Prince era, and it's also in the text, right? So the film is about Will Smith's character having been cloned against his knowledge, and then it kind of being used against him, and also the idea of this young Will Smith, in Clive Owen's view, the guy who runs the project. Young Will Smith is meant to replace old Will Smith, and he will only have done so when he kills old Will Smith. So the film, I think it does. I mean, I don't know, I suppose, what it's saying about that, because ultimately they make friends. So is it saying this is okay? I don't know.
I mean, it's so stupid. So I think, there's an interesting thing, I suppose, there. But this is not the film through which to explore it, because I do think it's of the utmost banality. And I also think that what studios or filmmakers would most like is, to vanish actors, right? Because, kind of actors are a problem. They're unreliable. They're, over emotional and, below tantrums and whatever. They're sensitive, which is what makes them actors, which is what makes them great actors, is to be sensitive to things. So I think what studios would like nothing better than to just get rid of all of them, right? And in a way, I was really glad to see the extent to which this fails in this movie. Because of course actors are also what brings life and excitement and layers and dynamism, life, and I think for me, part of the reason why this film feels dead throughout is, because of that, because of the CGI figures, and also because there being CGI figures means that all the interplay with the real actors and them is also, in fact, leaden and dead. So hurrah for actors.
Well, I agree, hurrah for actors. But like I said, I did find pleasures and in the CGI Will Smith here. I thought it worked.
Okay, well, I'm glad
despite all sorts of things, and so if anything for me, it's more of a worry because of them wanting to get rid of actors and everything.
Well,
like so, this isn't a Peter Cushing level where they're stealing a performance or they're stealing a likeness, but it kind of it is tricky, and it's hardly unaware, I think, that this question exists. But then, well, I don't know, if it is aware of it, it gives it a really weird answer in saying we can all be friends. We can be friends with our digital likenesses that the companies own. Although I suppose they do kill the company at the end.
Listen, to me, this is an advertisement for how those things don't work. Because again, the film is dead throughout. I mean,
you should definitely look at Benjamin Button. Benjamin Button.
I also think, and I wanted to say this, that Ang Lee, who should know better, shows no respect for actors in this movie at all. Because I was thinking when the Hungarian guy,
yes.
when he comes in, you think that would have been a moment to bring in some brilliant old star of yesterday, someone with charisma and authority and who could lift this whole moment. And instead, some unknown appears, who wasn't very good.
No.
I don't know who he is. But, I think that there's that lack of sensitivity to what actors can bring and also to what stars can bring. I think what he does with Will Smith here, whom I love and who I really do think is one of the most charismatic people on the planet, is criminal.
The actor's name, he's from Ukraine and he's called Ilya Volok.
Yeah,
Volok. He's Soviet-born.
Well,
and he's
fuck you, Ang Lee. If he would have cast somebody like John Voight in that part, instant lift,
Suppose, yeah. With a nice stereotypical accent. Or John Malkovich in that... What was that film where John Malkovich played a Russian? He was just hideously awful with his accent.
You don't choose somebody hideously awful, you choose somebody better.
Yeah, I mean, and it's weird to think of Ang Lee not being a good action director because having just rediscovered that he directed Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, he's got
that's a very particular type of action.
It is, but he does still have a great film in his sort of back catalogue.
Yeah, it's a great film.
So
it's two because I think he also did a sequel, didn't he, or a kind of a sequel?
There was one. I'll find out if he did it.
And those films are absolutely visually stunning as well.
I'm just having a look at his filmography to find out. No, he didn't do the sequel if there was one.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and then there's what?
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Yeah, the sequel was called Sword of Destiny. It was directed by Yuen Wu Ping, who was
that's not what I have in mind.
Who was the choreographer of the first film? Do you mean other films that
the film
Ang Lee
had
directed?
A different title, yes.
Do you remember who was in it? Or?
Yes, is it Jet Li?
Oh, Hero.
Hero, yes.
Yeah, that's not Ang Lee. That was Zhang Yimou.
Oh yes, obviously. Yeah, I love Zhang Yimou. Okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, not Ang Lee. But so yeah, look, there were things I like about this, and if you are going to see it, the way to see it is in high frame rate 3D plus.
Yeah,
I say that having not seen it in 24 frames per second, but I know it's not as good in 24 frames per second. I just know it.
The only reason to see this film is to experience that high frame rate in 3D.
And if you were really turned off by the high frame rate when you saw The Hobbit, as we both were,
this is completely different.
This gives high frame rates more of a reason to exist, and I think it's, I thought The Hobbit was like a death knell for high frame rates. I thought they're just going to force this on us. Peter Jackson continues to want to do all that, and but this, to me, demonstrates there is actual aesthetic value in this, even if it takes a while to sort of get there, even if it takes a while to get used to all that kind of thing. It enhances this film, and I think it's good. And it doesn't enhance it in a 4DX way where it's like, oh, well, at least it's giving you a roller coaster ride. It makes it look and feel better.
Still a crap film though.
Yeah, it's not a good film.
So thank you very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
iTunes, SoundCloud and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you go, Gemini Man.
Righto.
Not very good. But I liked it.
Okay, you've got the last word now. Good. I'm going to make some pasta.
You know what would have improved the film?
Sorry?
You know what would have improved the film?
What?
Will Smith theme tune.